The Chaotix are a group of characters who have been around for a very long time, some specific members even being conceptualized as early as the first Sonic game. However, them being the main focus of a story is a rarity. Even episode 75 of Sonic X breaks the fourth wall and pokes fun at the fact that in many ways they are very minor characters. Despite this, they are fan favorites. In fact, the reason I chose them for my third topic was the fact that mutuals and viewers were requesting that I cover them. Spin-off material is full of stuff relating to them, so I hope y'all enjoy as I cover the Chaotix. The Chaotix are a group of characters that appear in the Sonic games and spin-off material. They first appear in the game Knuckles Chaotix, where their lineup is Knuckles, acting as leader, Vector the Crocodile, Espio the Chameleon, Mighty the Armadillo, and Charmy Bee, as well as two robots known as Heavy and Bomb. The team would battle Eggman and later a giant modified version of Metal Sonic known as Metal Sonic Kai or Titan Metal Sonic. The team would be absent from the games until Sonic Heroes, where the remaining team members are Vector, Espio, and Charmy. In an interview with Electronic Gaming Monthly, Takashi Iizuka would refer to this as a soft reboot of sorts for these characters, as it felt some of the character traits were contradictory to how they were portrayed in their debut game. Funnily enough, just as they did in their debut game, they do have to do battle with a giant monstrous Metal Sonic again. The team has since been a mainstay for the Sonic franchise, appearing frequently in games and playing a prominent role in just about every comic series. They even have a background cameo in the tie-in comic for Sonic 2, confirming their place in the movie universe. Vector the Crocodile is one of Sonic's friends and is a member of Team Chaotix. While he made his in-game debut in 1995's Knuckles Chaotix, he was actually conceptualized as early as the first Sonic game, as a member of Sonic's band that was planned to appear during the sound test. While this concept was scrapped, this did lead to Vector appearing in both the Sonic 1 story manga, as well as the ongoing Sonic manga at the time, making his first official appearance 4 years before Knuckles Chaotix. The Chaotix Team Blast in Sonic Heroes kept his musical origins, though now he's lead vocalist rather than a keyboard player. Likewise, Heroes also promoted him from just a member of the Chaotix now to the lead detective of the Chaotix Detective Agency. He's been depicted as fairly money-driven, being the one to note the Chaotix's motto of never turning down a job that pays, which I suppose makes them less detectives and more morally upstanding mercenaries. Despite that, deep down, Vector's a really good guy. Vector is a side character who's gotten to appear fairly frequently in both the games and spin-off material, even being one of the few characters to make the jump to Sonic Boom, first appearing in the Season 2 episode Vector Detector, where he's a detective with a reality TV show. Vector is a bit of a hopeless romantic. More specifically, in Sonic X, he's given a crush on Vanilla, the mother of Cream the Rabbit. He's completely smitten with her, to the point that he projects his unresolved feelings for her onto Tails and Cosmo and spends the entirety of an episode trying to set those two up. While Sega generally doesn't often want to call back to Sonic X, Vector's crush on Vanilla is actually something they were in support of IDW referencing. On top of that, IDW seemingly hints at the feeling being mutual between Vector and Vanilla. Espio the Chameleon is one of Sonic's friends, a member of the Chaotix, and a ninja. He made his debut in Knuckles Chaotix, with a US manual referring to him as hot-headed, while the Japanese manual funnily enough makes reference to the fact that he's a detective, predating the official establishment of the Chaotix Detective Agency in canon by 8 years. The hot-headed personality never really took off, really only being showcased in the Fleetway comics. Espio would then be a playable character in Sonic the Fighters before his reintroduction in Sonic Heroes. The pre-reboot Archie comics delve much deeper into his ninja origins, establishing him as a member of the Shinobi clan, but that may be better to cover at another time. Same as Vector, he's made quite a few appearances across games and spin-off material. Notably, he's teamed up with both Shadow in Shadow the Hedgehog and Silver in Sonic Rivals 2, so he's frequently been paired with characters who were Sonic's rivals at one point or another. Charmy Bee is one of Sonic's friends and a member of the Chaotix. Like Vector, he actually predates his first playable appearance in Knuckles Chaotix, as he appeared in early chapters of the Sonic manga with a much different design, though eventually the design would be adjusted to something more in line to what we'd see in the games. The English language Knuckles Chaotix manual states he's surprisingly sophisticated for 16 years old, and the Japanese manual, from what I could translate, says he doesn't like to appear foolish. Which is quite different from the updated bio that appears in the Sonic Heroes manual that really emphasizes that he's a child and acts very childish. That definitely caused some problems for spin-off material, but we'll cover that a little later. Of course, like other core members of the Chaotix, he's made tons of appearances in Sonic media. Notably, both Fleetway and Archie independently decided that Charmy should be royalty. Nothing from his mainline appearances suggests this, and Fleetway Charmy and Archie Charmy are very different personality-wise. But hey, I think it's a very funny character trait to make the silly funny bee into an important political figure. Mighty the Armadillo is one of Sonic's friends and a member of the Chaotix. He made his first appearance in the 1993 arcade game Sega Sonic the Hedgehog 2 years before Knuckles' Chaotix. After this, he would take a very long hiatus from game appearances, essentially being left to only cameos, before finally returning in Sonic Mania. He was at one point considered to appear in Sonic Heroes early on in development on a team alongside Ray the Flying Squirrel, and Metal Sonic for some reason. While the English manual for Knuckles' Chaotix offers a very vague characterization of being strong and hating weakness, the Japanese manual states that he abhors violence. Like much from these manuals, it was ignored by practically every following piece of source material. Fleetway made him very absent-minded and quick to resort to a violent option, and pre-reboot Archie gave him serious anger issues. In fairness, post-reboot Archie does try to mend the gap in this characterization by having him be trained by the sagely Moss the Sloth to finally calm his explosive temper. Sonic Mania Adventures also depicts him as being rageful, though nowhere near as much as Knuckles. His friendship with Ray does seem to calm his nerves. At this time, Mighty is considered a classic character, so he probably won't appear in the mainline IDW comics anytime soon. But he has appeared in the IDW entries into the classic continuity, so he's a character we will see more of, even if it's not as often as we'd like. Heavy and Bomb are two badniks created by Eggman and technically members of the Chaotix. The manual states that Heavy was Robotnik's chief mechanic who Bomb worked alongside of, before defecting to the side of the Chaotix. Notably, I can't find them in the Japanese manual, and they are absent from pretty much all marketing material as well as the character select screen, only available to select as a partner. Their sole appearance is in the game Knuckles Chaotix, so not a whole lot of information about them. They are technically the first in-game badniks to switch sides. Spin-off material had beat them to that, though. Their appearances in the Archie comics shed more light on them. They are introduced as friends of Mighty. Robotnik had built them with power gems strong enough to grant them free will, so when they heard Robotnik's plan to capture the Freedom Fighters, they deserted Robotnik. Afterwards, they would be recruited into the Royal Secret Service, though Robotnik would eventually reprogram them to act as sleeper agents, leading them to betray Sonic and friends against their will, which in turn led to their eventual destruction. They would be used by Eggman once more before the two would be rebuilt by Tails and Rotor with their original free will intact, though the comic would be rebooted shortly after their return and they never appeared post-reboot. At one point in the Fleetway comics, Fang the Sniper, aka Knack the Weasel, was a member of the Chaotix. Issue 53 of Sonic the Comic introduces the Chaotix as guardians of the Special Zone, and Knack is among them. At first, the Chaotix pick a fight with Knuckles after misidentifying him as an ally of Robotnik. While Knuckles fights off the Chaotix, the Omniviewer, a sentient energy field from the Special Zone, is kidnapped by the Metallics. Knuckles and the Chaotix put their differences aside to rescue him, though Knack still doesn't trust Knuckles. When the Chaotix are discovered in an air vent by the Metallics, Knack is quick to flee, leaving the others to handle the robot. After Knuckles dispatches the robot, Knack reappears, telling the team he knows exactly where the Omniviewer is. However, instead of leading them to the Omniviewer, he leads them directly to a trap where it's revealed that Knack not only betrayed them, but that he's also responsible for the Metallics being able to kidnap the Omniviewer, as the Metallics offered him money to do so. Then it's revealed the Metallics double-crossed him as well, and that they have no further use for him. Knack says he saw this coming and makes an attempt to fight back with a disruptor, but would be knocked unconscious before he could use it. Knuckles then grabs the weapon and uses it, giving the Chaotix time to save the Omniviewer and escape. Knack is then put into prison in the Special Zone, though he wouldn't stay there long, as he would eventually become an occasional antagonist for both the Chaotix and Sonic. The pre-reboot Archie comics offer their own depiction for how the Chaotix fit into Sonic's world. In many ways, they are to Knuckles as the core cast of Freedom Fighters are to Sonic. They are the friends Knuckles can provably rely on for help. Members of the Chaotix featured prominently in Knuckles' spin-off series, and they've assisted Knuckles in guarding the Master Emerald. Does this kind of undermine the frequent Knuckles trait of being a loner? Yeah, but in many ways, it accommodates another central theme of the Sonic series of being able to rely on your friends in times of need. So it works. The Archie comics also took the initiative to expand the lineup of characters who are part of the Chaotix, and those are the characters who we'll be looking at next. Ray the Flying Squirrel is one of Sonic's friends, and in the Archie comics, a member of the Chaotix.
Like Mighty, he first appeared in the arcade game Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, before taking a long hiatus and appearances, before finally reappearing in Sonic Mania. A common trait through the vast majority of his appearances is that he's very close with Mighty. He makes his debut to the Archie comics in issue 26 of the Knuckles spinoff, where his long absence from the comic is explained by the fact that he was trapped in another dimension for 6 years. This is just normal comic book stuff, I'm not too overtly concerned with that. After being rescued, he does begin teaming with the Chaotix, though at first he is notably more childish than the rest of the group, as he did not age during his time in the other dimension, as it experiences time differently. Vector even refers to his position on the team as a junior Chaotic. He is also shown to be anxious under pressure, as he'll begin to stutter. He is, however, shown to be very clever, as he feigns a super form to scare off some would-be Master Emerald thieves. Post-reboot, the age shenanigans seem to disappear, but even though he's no longer depicted alongside the Chaotix, they keep him by Mighty's side, staying true to their long-established friendship. Ray, like Mighty as far as we know, is still considered a classic character, so we won't be seeing him in the mainline IDW comics for the foreseeable future. But we have seen him in IDW's entries into the classic side of the franchise. Saffron Bee is a character in the Archie comics who was a childhood friend of Charmy. When Charmy returned to his home and placed his prince in the Golden Hive colony, she also became his fiancée. I feel the need to remind everyone that at the time, the agreed upon lore, per the Knuckles Chaotix manual, was that Charmy was 16, so it's less weird if you think about it that way. She also has a history of being pretty inconsistently designed before they figured out how they wanted her to look. While Sonic was off-planet following the Zorda incident, Eggman attacked the Golden Hive colony, with Charmy and Saffron appearing to be the only bees to have escaped. Even Charmy point-blank stating that they couldn't find any survivors. From here, Saffron becomes a regular member of the Archie iteration of the Chaotix, even being entrusted to guard the Master Emerald at one point. She does also appear to care a lot for Charmy, as after an incident that really deserves its own video, she vows to stick by Charmy's side despite his memory being impaired. She, like another member of the Archie Chaotix that was introduced to the comic by Penders, would be captured by the villain Thrash the Devil and sent to an unknown location through a warp ring, never to be seen again. This deeply upsets Knuckles and the rest of the Chaotix. On a lighter note, Saffron is frequently depicted holding a plushie of a Nighttopian from the Nights into Dreams franchise. Julie-Su is a character in the Archie comics and was the girlfriend of Knuckles the Echidna. Her father was the leader of the Dark Legion, essentially an evil group of echidnas. She would meet Knuckles during his conflicts with the Legion, which would subsequently shake her faith in the Legion's cause, and would eventually cause her to join the Chaotix, even saving their lives on occasion. She would then develop feelings for Knuckles, which he would eventually return. She does show a lot of care for Knuckles and is always there to support him. Rouge the Bat becomes a bit of a romantic rival to her, as she also has an interest in Knuckles, causing the two to be frequently at odds. She also at one point trained Amy to hone her fighting ability. Like Saffron, as she was created by Ken Penders, to write her out of the comic, she had been captured by Thrash the Devil and teleported to an unknown location, never to be seen again. We are shown a possible future timeline where she and Knuckles have a daughter, but that's a story for another time. Archimedes is a character who appears in the Archie comics. While he isn't officially listed as a member of the Chaotix, you could probably consider him one. For generations, members of the Fire Ant Council acted as a guide to the Guardians of the Master Emerald. Think of it like a Jiminy Cricket. Archimedes is the latest in the line of these guides. He's officially introduced to the comic in the Knuckles miniseries, though he was teased much earlier. He first makes contact with Knuckles after fake kidnapping the Chaotix. Initially, Archimedes seems pretty resentful as his position as the Guardian's guardian, though he and Knuckles do eventually warm up to one another. While he appeared fairly consistently in Knuckles' spin-off book, after that was cancelled, his role diminished over time, only appearing very briefly in bit roles or simply there to provide exposition. He does offer to sacrifice his life to save Knuckles, though Locke, Knuckles' father, is the one to actually make that sacrifice. Last we saw of him in the comic was him joining the Chaotix and guarding the Master Emerald. Being that this character was created by Ken Penders, you can probably assume this character met the same fate as Julie-Su and Saffron Bee. Matilda the Armadillo is a character in the Archie comics and is the younger sister of Mighty the Armadillo. She's not a member of the Chaotix, but she's certainly Chaotix adjacent. Their parents were put in prison as it was discovered they were thieves, leading Mighty to go into exile and Matilda to be put in an orphanage. Then, she, like many Mobians, had been kidnapped by Robotnik and roboticized, with her specifically being sent with a battalion of robots to target the settlement of Sandblast City. When Matilda and her fellow comrades had been de-roboticized, they were rejected by the citizens of the settlement as they didn't trust them. To survive the area, Beauregard Rabot, the uncle of Bunny Rabbit, made a deal with Eggman and the Dark Legion to have the group legionized, which is a short way to say receive cybernetic upgrades. To repay Eggman for the full upgrade, she and the other legionized Mobians are ordered to capture an oil refinery, though Sonic and Bunny cause them to be unsuccessful, destroying the refinery in the process. When Mighty finally reunites with her, as they were separated at a young age, despite Mighty being overjoyed to see her, she doesn't actually remember him, even refusing to get involved when he's in danger. However, Ray begins berating her, which subsequently rejogs her memory, and in very short succession, the two save one another. Her rescue of Mighty leaves her badly damaged, but she's definitely going to survive. However, that means she'll need to stay near Sandblast City and remain in proximity to the Dark Legion, meaning that despite their reunion, Mighty and Matilda will have to be separated once more, although Mighty promises he'll see her again. The comic then got rebooted after that, and we don't get a resolution to this storyline. As far as I can tell, Ken Penders makes no legal claim to her, though she is first mentioned in passing in a story that Penders wrote, but wasn't developed on at all. She also doesn't appear in either of the lists Penders posted outlining the characters he owns the copyright to. In both versions of the possible future timeline of Light Mobius, the Archie comics show a future version of the Chaotix. The core team is confirmed to still be around, though their role seems to have shifted to conducting peace talks after the fall of Robotnik, and we don't really get to see much of them. Two more members of the Chaotix are introduced through this, though. Lara-su, the daughter of Knuckles and Julie-Su, who I don't want to talk about right now, and Argyle the Crocodile, the son of Vector the Crocodile. We don't know who the mom is, but I think most of you watching are willing to hazard a guess. He generally isn't outgoing, as Vector describes him as a homebody, and from the times conflict has arisen, while he does help out, he doesn't directly fight, instead opting to help out in a more techie way. He's also depicted as having a crush on Lara-su, which I kinda like the idea of Vector and Knuckles being in-laws. He was first depicted in a story that Ken Penders wrote, but funnily enough, he's not on either list of characters he stated he owns, which are pretty thorough, including characters that had only appeared once. So no telling if we'll see him in that. So the question is, just how strong is Mighty the Armadillo? Well, the Archie comics more or less answer this between issues 264 and 265. After it being teased for many issues, Sonic finally transforms into his Werehog form after suffering a severe electric shock from Thunderbolt the Chinchilla. The comic wastes no time in showing just how destructive this form is, even defeating Thunderbolt's mech suit in a single hit. He nearly destroys her as well before Mighty stops him. Mighty attempts to reason with Sonic, but the Werehog form twists his perception of what Mighty is saying to him, leading the two to begin fighting. While Mighty first tries to avoid combat, he finally retaliates by catching Sonic's arm and throwing him through several trees. They're pretty even with each other from this point, with the eventual result being unclear as the fight ends prematurely after Amy, Sally, Ray, and even Mighty finally manage to talk Sonic down. So as I said before, there were some inconsistencies between the original bios for Charmy printed in the Knuckles Chaotix manual and the eventual one that would be put in the Sonic Heroes manual. Not even just the fact that Heroes made Charmy 10 years younger than he previously was, but giving him a scatterbrained, goofy personality rather than how the English Knuckles Chaotix manual described him as surprisingly mature. So the team behind the Archie comics were met with editorial pressure from Sega to bring him more in line with the games. This would be a difficult task, especially being that he had a fiancé at this point. Personally, I wouldn't have been able to come up with anything. This is all to say that, Ian Flynn was in a pretty unenviable position. In short, Eggman kidnapped the majority of the Mobians we know of and put them in a device known as the Egg Grape Chamber, that basically converts living beings to fuel. It had been used a couple times prior to this, and it's always terrifying. Charmy ends up being the first of its victims this time, with Sonic, Amy, Tails, and Knuckles breaking in to help just as soon as the process begins. Charmy was still seemingly injured by this, but the initial effects were unclear, though it would eventually become evident that Charmy was suffering from memory loss, and the comic also carried an unintentional implication that Charmy had serious brain damage. This is something that Ian Flynn has been openly regretful about, as he probably didn't expect people to take it this way. And also, in all fairness to Flynn, after this initial event, he does treat Charmy's condition seriously, with the weight you would expect something like this to be given in any other story.
So yeah, overall, it's a very unfortunate plot beat, but by both the fact that the Archie comics were under pressure to do something about Charmy, and the fact that the criticism towards the angle was reacted to appropriately, this is far from being the worst thing I've seen in comics.
Renfield T. Rodent is the first recurring villain the Archie comics give the Chaotix. First introduced in the Knuckles Chaotix special, he's a corrupt carnival owner who helps Robotnik capture the freedom fighters in a hall of mirrors, resulting directly in the formation of the Chaotix. He is arrested at the end of the comic. Next time we see him, he's still in control of the carnival, and now attempting to get Mobians addicted to his food products by using illegal substances in the sauce. As another criminal figure took over his plan by force halfway through, he wasn't actually arrested this time around. He is arrested the final time we see him, though, as he once again sided with Robotnik, opening a casino to cover up one of Robotnik's factories. Messages and PSAs regarding illegal substances in comics is nothing new. At this point, they're pretty much expected. Can you guess why this character is named Snowflame? So it was only a matter of time before one of these messages made its way to the Sonic comics. Mello Bee was a childhood friend of Charmy Bee. In fact, he was seemingly the only friend Charmy maintained after leaving the Golden Hive colony. At one point, him and Charmy went to Happy Land, unaware that Renfield T. Rodent was still managing it, as well as being unaware of the fact that the sauce of the chili dogs contained a dangerous and addictive hallucinogenic that could be fatal in large quantities. While the Chaotix do end up affected by this substance while investigating and survive, Mello was not so lucky and passes away, his passing motivating Charmy to return to his responsibilities in the Golden Hive colony. Archie Charmy's really going through it, just all the time. A thing I neglected to mention, partly because TikTok censors are absurd, was exactly what illegal substance the story was about. They gave a fictional name for the condition it causes: lemon sundrop dandelion poisoning. You can tell exactly by the first letters of each of those words as to what it's supposed to be, plus with the added fact that it causes vivid hallucinations. That being said, typical of anti-drug PSAs of this era, there is some misinformation present. It's being utilized in the chili dog sauce for its addictive qualities, but LSD, like a lot of hallucinogens, is not considered an addictive drug. Now, one can become addicted to the experience it produces, but addictiveness is not a trait of the substance itself. The actual danger with LSD comes from the fact that the human body will develop a tolerance to it, and thus future uses will require a higher dosage, which is what then becomes dangerous because it is a bit of an unpredictable substance. While the addictiveness of the substance is misrepresented, the part about higher dosages being dangerous is adapted accurately, as it's established early on that Renfield Rodent is using far too much of it. So while it is typical scaremongering of this era of comic PSAs, it's at least a little accurate. Thank you for watching. I'm continuing to post videos daily on TikTok, and if you want to support me and keep these videos going, you can do so through my Patreon. I want to give a shout out to my current patrons, Ned Rex, Tentacle Teapot, and AJ Wigglesworth. See y'all in the next video.